Welcome to the Neverworld podcast, where together we explore the strange and unusual. Every journey starts with the first step into the unknown. Hi, folks. I'm
Hey,
Scott.
I'm Scott. Welcome to Neverworld podcast. We're going to do a quick pair take for you. See if Dave and I have any clue about what topic gets randomly chosen. And yes, I actually just remembered to record this time, which is shocking. And we are going to spin the wheel and see what kind of thing we do or do not know about. What is it? What is it?
Spin, you whirling dervish of doom.
This is a good one, folks. The Satanic Panic of the 1980s.
Oh, geez. Just watch Stranger Things.
Pretty much. Now, I'm going to preface by that. If you have watched the last season of Stranger Things, they touch on the Satanic Panic that happened. Right. And I saw online where people were questioning the validity of that. The things they showed you, yes, it was true. Yes. Everything that they showed, and let me tell you about growing up in the 80s. Everything was satanic. But everything was of the devil.
But it was fun.
I don't know what launched this. It could have been Phil Donahue having Anton LaVey on, or
what a hack that guy is. What a hack.
Absolutely. I will go on record on saying that as a fucking hack. If you read the Satanic Bible and you still can't see he's a hack, I don't know what you read, because it's pretty obvious that they only had one thing in mind.
I read most of it just to see what was going on, because I've read a lot of religious stuff and I've read a lot of anti-religious stuff. I honestly talk about this real quick.
Yes, please.
I read it, and all it was anti-Christian. If the Bible said one thing, he said the other. If the what's the Jewish faith?
The Torah.
The Torah said one thing, he said the other. He left alone Muslims, apparently, though, because Muslims would have fucking killed him with good call, because that guy's an asshole. He's never been worth a shit of a human being, but that's beside the point. The point
I got that from reading it, yeah.
He was just doing it to make a buck. And any religion you push just to make a buck, you deserve all the bad that you get. I don't care what you are, but Anton LaVey he's a joke.
It became a counterculture, a status symbol of this in the 70s and stuff, when he was doing all of this, and he became kind of a boogeyman. And I don't know what set it off, but I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and people would accuse it of being the devil and stuff. I just never understood that. Growing up in the 80s, people in my town accused me of being a devil worshiper because I was different. I embraced it. I went with it, and they left me the fuck alone.
I am a worshiper of Pan, not the devil.
Yeah. So anyway,
look a lot alike.
But what I got from reading LaVey is, I think this episode is going to get an E rating as well for explicit lyrics, and we apologize, folks. We do another podcast, and we're just pretty free with it, and it's hard to stop sometimes. Yeah, I've already done it too.
The other one,
but everything from Dungeons and Dragons to books. And damn Tom Hanks in his Mazes and Monsters movie. That might have been the one that set it off. It was a movie about some kids who played Dungeons and Dragons, but they called it Mazes and Monsters. Yeah. And somebody, I think, ended up killing themselves or something. I don't remember. It was just some bullshit.
The kid had a nervous breakdown, and somebody else killed themselves. It's a terrible movie. Number one, it's a terrible movie.
And it makes makes a scapegoat of stuff that people don't understand.
Yeah, made D&D a scapegoat that everybody looked at and was like, "Oh my god, that's what it does to you." No, that's
Dungeons and Dragons
for a couple of years by that time.
All Dungeons and Dragons is math and improv.
It's acting. It's creative writing. It's acting
and math.
Like you said, it's improv and maps.
Yeah.
I used to love drawing up the maps and putting the monsters in it.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in many, many years, but
I still play, so I guess I'm going to hell. We have an online group that plays, so which is fun.
Only because you're a bad wizard.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not a wizard, but anyway, so that this is something that happened.
You got offended. I'm not a wizard.
Not a wizard.
I'm a little elf. I'm a little forest elf.
I'm a little elf. Damn it. Anyway,
His name is Rebecca.
You couldn't turn on an afternoon TV show without getting a Satanic Panic, from Geraldo to Phil Donahue to Sally Jesse Raphael to whoever was on at that time, and it was always these horror stories. I heard it from people. They would just make up this bull of there's these cults and they're worshiping the devil up on this hill. You go up there at night, you'll see them. You know what? We went up there all the time. We never could find anybody. And it's like, what are you doing?
Were talking about?
We must have been in a roundabout loop.
Light a fire right here. Wait, see who shows up.
It's possible. It's possible. And it was just everything you touched. And so when I hear people talk about Harry Potter as the devil and Pokemon as the devil, it's like, enough. We've been through the 80s. So yes, folks, the Stranger Things portrayal of the Satanic Panic is 100% real.
I remember it being in a lot of music, and I think the problem with that, and let me just say this real quick, and whether you agree with me or not, I don't know. There is a lot of weird, evil shit going.
It doesn't matter.
A lot of weird, evil stuff going on right now in the world that I would consider demonic, satanic, just evil, just evil. The news media doesn't talk about it. I mean, this stuff is blatant. We'll talk, we're talking Epstein blatant. 3 things that don't hang themselves: Christmas lights, drywall, and Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
I love Kennedy for saying that. But
that's beautiful. I hadn't heard that. That's great.
There's stuff going on now, and the news media ignores it. There wasn't really anything going on back then, and the media made something up, and they called it the Satanic Panic. Oh my God, everybody's a devil worshiper. If you listen to heavy metal, if you listen to Judas Priest, AC/DC, well, you know what AC/DC means. It means assume both ways. You talk to the people that were in AC/DC, and they're like, "Yeah, it's electrical currents. We just thought it's
got cool. The lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's got a lightning. It's electric. What are you talking about?" Who was it? Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden came out with the one album,
The Number of the Beast.
The Number of the Beast. It's a great album.
Oh yeah. Where is a human number? Oh, sorry.
What's funny is they talk about the song 666, 666, the number of the beast. And I watched an interview with the lead singer that I can't remember his name right now. And
Bruce Dickinson.
Thank you. And he was like, "Yeah, we wrote the song. We just thought it was cool. They were looking at it like mythology,
which they did a lot of.
Yeah, exactly. He goes, we handled that like we would a regular mythology. We didn't think anything of it. Nobody in the record industry made a big deal about it." He said it hit America right at the height of Satanic Panic. Yeah. And he goes, "I don't know whether it did our album good."
Oh, I think it did.
It hurt our sales. Because on one hand, you're like, okay, if that wouldn't have been happening, would they have sold more albums? Or did they sell more albums because it was happening at the time? And he's like, he didn't have an answer. He said, "I don't know. It's a good song." He goes, "If you listen to the words, we're not telling anybody to go do it. We're telling the story of that." Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, he's right. I listened to that song. I never particularly cared for it because being raised Catholic and then being thrown into a Southern Baptist church, kind of get weary of Satan there for a bit. Yeah. But so when I started listening to that song again after I saw him in the interview, I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. It's like Motley Crue's
Shout at the Devil.
Yeah, Shout at the Devil. When you listen to the words to that, you're like, nobody's saying go with the devil.
Now let me jump on that.
What everybody jumped on.
Yeah. And speaking of jumping on, I believe bands like Motley Crue and many others rode the Satanic Panic wave.
Oh yeah.
Motley Crue said, "Screw it, we're putting an inverted pentagram on our albums and F you."
We're gonna do it.
And they did it, and it was everywhere. all the way down to bands like ELO, Electric Light Orchestra,
Right.
had recorded backtracking, backmasking music that you only hear and words you only hear if you play the album backwards.
Right.
That started appearing on all kinds of albums, and the one that really sticks with me is ELO, a nice pop
Really
band.
What the
Oh
hell
yeah,
album did they do that was backmasked?
it's El Dorado. It has Dorothy's ruby slippers on the front and the witch's hand.
Right, yeah.
It's full of backmasking.
Really?
Yes.
This is the first I've ever heard of it.
And it's all satanic.
Oh, great. I think I'll just pass that one up.
Their follow-up album, I believe that came...
I won't listen to that album.
The follow-up album, which I believe came after it, was called Secret Messages. And it is full of backwards messages, too, that are just jokes. Oh my God. Yeah. Fun. Yeah, so it was I think a lot of bands said, you know what? This might get us some sales. Let's do it.
Well, yeah,
because people think they hear something. And you can probably go on YouTube and find examples where somebody might have recorded all of this stuff backwards. And some of it is true and accurate, and others is like, I think our ears are just playing with us because that's what you're
trying
to make something of it. Yeah, like you see something in a cloud, you hear something in the backwards voice. So
Judas Priest's album Stained Glass.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot the song.
That is a very controversial one there.
The parents of some kid who blew his brains out.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
2 kids.
Tried to was it 2 kids? Tried to sue Judas Priest and the album company for, backmasking. And they're like, we didn't backmask.
There's nothing on there.
No. There's nothing on there. And they're like, see, whether you play it backwards, you hear it. And this went on for a couple of years. I mean, this stuff got serious.
I remember this in court. Yes.
They were going to try and throw the lead singer in prison at one point.
Yeah, Rob talks a lot about it in his autobiography about this incident.
Yeah, and he's like, literally, we didn't backmask anything. And even if we did, you wouldn't be able to hear it because it's playing backwards, for the love of God.
Like your brain is going to figure that out.
They wind up playing the album backwards. And what they're saying, whatever it is like, worship the devil,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like, worship the devil, kill yourself, glory to Satan, or something like that. It's just like, and when they're playing it backwards, you're listening to it. And I remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, I don't hear any of that. I mean, they had to play this thing like 10 times before I even heard like 1 or 2 things that sounded maybe like a word, but not what they were saying. And I'm like, how is this even still in court? That should have been day 1. That should have been day freaking. These kids wound up, it turns out, I think the kids had some kind of mental disorders already.
Well, I'm sure they had something going on.
See somebody and taking meds, and it was a
sad situation all around.
Yeah, it was a bad situation, and the parents needed to lash out at somebody, and they picked a band. Stained Glass is one of my favorite Judas Priest albums to this day. They had some really good songs on there.
Yeah.
And I never understood how that album particularly got them in that kind of trouble.
Hey, just a random trivia, because this is how my brain works. And after reading Rob's biography, I don't know if you knew that they were approached to do a song for Top Gun, and they turned it down. So
zoinks. Really?
Rob says that wasn't the smartest choice of theirs.
Jinkies, heck no, it wasn't. He could have been in the new soundtrack too.
I know, right? They didn't think anything of it, so it's like, wow.
No, they were probably thinking soundtrack. Come on, go to Queen.
Yeah. Instead, we got Kenny Loggins. But anyway, just out of nowhere. But I remember the whole court trial. Yeah. With that. And
that was terrible.
And it happened so many times and continued to happen into the 90s with Marilyn Manson, Eminem.
Marilyn Manson really pushed that like way too much, in my opinion.
I have no use for Marilyn Manson. I will go on record and say he's a horrible human being, and the hell with him. I don't want to give him any more play.
I just assume that he is. Just from all the stupid shit I heard.
If you look up all the thing about his sex dungeons and what he's done to people is
none of them, huh?
Yeah.
Why is he
money? Anyway, I want to touch on something because my conspiracy brain works this way.
Keep it in. Let's do it.
When we talk about the satanic when we talk about the satanic panic of the 80s, what does that do to people? It causes fear.
Right.
What
Yes.
can you do
Yes.
with people who are afraid? You can manipulate, you can control. So as long as people were so afraid of the invisible boogeyman Satan hiding under the bed because you played Judas Priest, you're going to hell. The government and everybody else is taking advantage of that.
It's taking
So
away everybody's rights.
every time. So
Well, and what happened? A bunch of wives of congressmen and senators started trying to tell people that they weren't allowed to write lyrics to songs.
I love how that backfired.
Unelected freaking officials, bunch of BS, buttheads, hypocrite pieces of garbage.
The PMRC
to be sleeping with a senator or a congressman are telling guys who have busted their butts that they're all evil and they shouldn't be allowed to write their music. F you, and the horse you rode in on.
What happened with that? And this is all part of it, So you had this like, oh my God, we got this horrible music. We've got to regulate it. We've got to put an explicit logo on there to warn parents so their kids don't hear it. These records that had the explicit logo witnessed increased sales. As a teenager, I looked for that. Walmart refuses, and probably still to this day, they won't carry stuff with certain album covers or lyrics and stuff. And it's like, no, your censorship doesn't work. You
know what? If you're a private company and you want to do that, I get it. Like if you're just like, I'm uncomfortable with doing that, I'm not going to sell that particular guy, whatever.
Yeah,
I get it. You have every right, no problem. I'm not even going to judge you at that point. But I remember when this did not help anybody in any way, shape, or form.
No.
When Luke Skywalker and 2 Live Crew came out with their album, number one, it was the worst freaking thing that I'd ever heard in my life.
It is. It's absolutely horrible, but they did it on purpose.
They did. Yeah, absolutely. They did it on purpose. Yeah. And I understand why they did it on purpose. But I'm just sitting there thinking there was a better way to do it. But man, they made a lot of money doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Me So Horny was quite the chart topper.
It was it's a terrible album, folks.
It is.
And if you find it, I don't recommend it, but you'll see the kind of crap that was being put out and I think that happened as they were trying to do the censoring. I think
so they just went full on.
So they were just like, well, nasty. What, you want to hear something dirty? Well, here you go. And it's filthy porn is basically what it is.
It was.
But then I'm like, I remember thinking that's not helping anybody's cause, guys.
No, and here's what's fun. Here's what's funny with all of that. What helped us was Dee Snider, Frank Zappa, John Denver. I mean, what a pairing, a group of people.
The one that got everybody, Dee Snider came in and he basically told them to go F off, that's a rock and roll thing to do, which is cool. And I'd agree with that. Frank Zappa came in, cool, calm, collected, and tie, doing his Zappa talk. And he belittled everybody. I don't know if you remember watching it, but
absolutely.
These guys would be, this guy's a rock star. He's a drug addict. Frank Zappa, I don't think ever did drugs, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I want to say I read something that he never did any strong
just titties
drugs.
and beer.
Yeah, titties and beer. But he just buried every one of these congressmen's.
Oh yeah, it was beautiful.
Like they were so far beneath Frank Zappa and his intellect, it was scary. The one that everybody was afraid of, they called in John Denver. Now, if you don't know who John Denver is, what the hell?
I don't know what to tell you. One of the greatest Americana folk singers out there.
he did some of the greatest albums in the world, bar none. And then some of his music on those albums were really bad. I've listened
some
to
of it. Man, he's got such a library.
How did you do Country Road and then do that? But that's beside the point. John Denver was a very nice, white bread, easygoing guy. Christians hated him.
It's so weird.
Because he didn't necessarily believe in God. He believed in God in a different way. And they didn't know how to handle that. And he was just like, well, I'm not giving you any of my money just because you're a big corporate church. I don't care. He put his money where his mouth was.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of enemies. But he was a very pure guy. He was a very nice guy. He was he didn't swear in any of his songs. He was literally what every parent wants their kid to grow up to be. The rockers were terrified. They're like, Jesus Christ, John Denver's going to come in here. He's going to be all about censoring. He's going to be like, yeah, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. John Denver went in there and laid down the law on those people about censoring and how anti-American it was, how anti-constitutional it was, how antithetical it was to our basic freedoms of choice and of free speech. And all the rockers, if I remember correctly, he got applause. If I remember correctly,
it's been a long time since I've looked into it.
Years, however the hell long it's been, and he literally said, though I don't do this, I've already been censored. I've already been attacked to be censored by the exact people I was just talking about. The far right.
Mm-hmm.
They hated the guy. And they tried to close down his albums. They tried to close down. I remember being in a private school and them saying he was basically a devil worshiper. And that's when I looked at the guy that was in charge and said, are you effing nuts? John Denver? Have you listened to his music? Oh, yes, it's all, he doesn't mention God. I'm like,
you can't with these people. You just can't.
But, if you listen to his music, it's nothing but God, You know
that, I know that, but.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that's how far crazy
the fear was strong. It was nuts.
Yeah, everybody was a Satan worshiper if you disagreed with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the left was just as bad as the right because they were all trying to get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
know? It was absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts.
I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. And it just shows how easy you can stir shit up. And
manipulate, like you'd said earlier. As long as you have everybody looking in one direction, if you're a government, you can do something completely different over here. And
we got everybody worried about the devil, and we're the real devils sitting right here. So
the real devils are the ones that are making all these laws right now.
Yep.
Keep on your eyes, folks.
So, folks, keep your eyes open. The satanic panic of the 80s was real, and there's a lot of stuff that happens to this day that is very reminiscent of it, where they pile on. And if you want to, we can go in depth at another time, but it kind of reminds me of the cancel culture.
It's the exact same thing.
Pretty much. But that's a long discussion that I'm not ready to have tonight.
No.
So, but that is,
I'm tired.
it is very similar. And it's like, I didn't see the parallels until now. And it's like, well, here we go again. History continues to repeat itself.
As we talk, you start
connecting dots.
Yep. You're like, oh, that's the same thing that they did over here back 40 years ago. And guys our age have forgotten. And then they start looking at it, now they're starting to probably look at it because a lot more people are waking up and looking around going, oh, I can't trust anybody. I got my family, I got my friends, and that's all I can trust. And that's all you can trust, folks. Sorry. Hate to say it. Can't trust anybody else. Friends and family.
That's it. So, folks,
everyone else.
I would love for you to drop us a line, give us a ghost story, give us something that's happened to you. Tell us about your life during the satanic panic of the 80s, or if you're experiencing something now.
Yeah, or if you know of anything that happened that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Just like if you know, like, oh, I remember the hearings, and do you remember this guy showing up or that guy or this lady showing up?
Absolutely.
Just let us know because it's interesting. You probably find that stuff on YouTube.
I'm sure it's all up there. So thanks again. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the share, and thanks for joining us on our little trip down the Neverworld.
Thank you very much for joining us and spending your time with us. It's all valuable, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Catch you next week.